What would you sacrifice for love? Your family? Your fortune? Your legacy? Michael Underwood and Ruth Hunter were born into hatred, raised to destroy each other, trained to be weapons in a war they never started. One act of kindness, one moment of humanity, and everything their fathers built over decades came crashing down. They fell in love in the shadows. They fought their families in the light. And when the world found out, it became the scandal that shook two empires. This is the story of two people who chose each other over everything. A love so powerful, it ended a generation of hate. Or did it? Subscribe now and relax, because what you're about to witness is the most controversial love story of our time. This is Rivals to Lovers. The Underwood Empire and the Hunter Dynasty, two names that could never be spoken in the same breath without someone spitting afterward. For 30 years, William Underwood and Randall Hunter had been locked in a vicious corporate war that had cost both families millions, countless sleepless nights, and any semblance of peace. It started over a deal in 1995. William had allegedly stolen a contract right from under Randall's nose through what Randall called corporate espionage and backstabbing. William claimed he'd simply been smarter and faster. The truth was buried somewhere in between, but neither man cared about truth anymore. They cared about winning, about dominance, about making the other man bleed. Every business sector they entered became a battlefield. Real estate, technology, pharmaceuticals, renewable energy. If there was money to be made, both families clawed their way to the top, sabotaging each other at every turn. Board meetings became war rooms. Negotiations became psychological warfare. Employees were caught in the crossfire, forced to choose sides in a conflict that predated most of their careers. Michael Underwood grew up hearing his father's war stories like other children heard fairy tales. "Never trust a hunter," William would say, his jaw clenched, his eyes cold. "They're snakes. All of them. They'll smile at you while they sharpen the knife for your back." Michael's mother, Rachel, was quieter about the feud, but she never contradicted her husband. The Hunters were the enemy. That was simply how the world worked. Across town, in an equally opulent mansion, Ruth Hunter received the same indoctrination. Randall would pace his study, whiskey in hand, ranting about William Underwood's theft and treachery. Ruth's mother, Doris, would sit silently, embroidering or reading, occasionally sighing but never intervening. "That family is poison, Ruth," Randall would say, pointing his finger for emphasis. "William Underwood destroyed everything I'd worked for. He's a liar and a cheat, and his son will be no different. Stay away from anyone with that cursed name." But here's the thing about children raised in hate. They become very good at hating on command, without ever understanding why. Michael and Ruth grew up as weapons being sharpened for a war they'd inherited. They attended different schools, moved in different social circles, lived parallel lives that were never meant to intersect. Michael was groomed from childhood to be the perfect heir. Business school at Harvard. Internships at Fortune 500 companies. Weekends spent shadowing his father, learning the ruthless tactics that had kept Underwood Enterprises on top. He was brilliant, driven, and utterly focused. At 24, he'd already closed deals worth hundreds of millions. Ruth's path was identical, just in a different building. Stanford Business School. Leadership roles in Hunter Industries' international divisions. She was sharp as a blade, with her father's determination and her mother's grace. She could read a balance sheet faster than most people could read a menu, and she negotiated like she was born doing it. They were mirror images, shaped by the same hatred, driven by the same ambition, haunted by the same family ghosts. When they graduated and returned home to take their places in their respective empires, neither William nor Randall wasted time with celebrations. "Now the real work begins," both fathers said, almost identically, to their children. The heirs had arrived. The next generation of the war was about to begin. Neither Michael nor Ruth knew that in 6 months, their entire world would explode. That a simple act of kindness would unravel decades of carefully constructed hatred. That they would become the greatest scandal their families had ever known. The clock was ticking. The deal of a lifetime was coming, and fate was sharpening its knife. 6 months into their careers, both Michael and Ruth had proven themselves to be exactly what their fathers had hoped: ruthless, brilliant, and hungry for victory. Michael had already secured 3 major contracts for Underwood Enterprises. Ruth had expanded Hunter Industries into 2 new international markets. The war was being fought by new soldiers, and the battleground was getting bloodier. Then the Meridian Project was announced. $10 billion. A revolutionary sustainable energy initiative that would reshape the entire industry. Government contracts, international partnerships, licensing deals that would generate revenue for decades. It wasn't just a deal. It was a dynasty-defining moment. Every major corporation in the country wanted it. Only 3 would be selected to pitch. William Underwood stormed into Michael's office the morning the announcement went public. "This is it, son. This is how we destroy Randall Hunter once and for all. We win this, and his company will spend the next decade trying to recover. I want you leading this pitch." That same morning, across the city, Randall Hunter sat across from Ruth in his mahogany-paneled office. "The Meridian Project is ours, Ruth. I don't care what it takes. Underwood will come after this with everything he has, which means you need to be better than perfect. You need to be legendary. Make me proud." The pressure was suffocating. Both heirs threw themselves into research with an intensity that bordered on obsession. 18-hour days became normal. Sleep became optional. Michael's penthouse was covered in blueprints, financial projections, and feasibility studies. Ruth's apartment looked like a war room, every surface covered with data analysis and strategic plans. 3 weeks later, the announcement came. Out of 47 applicants, 3 companies were selected for final presentations: Underwood Enterprises, Hunter Industries, and Samuelson Global Group. The presentations would take place over 3 days. Each company would pitch, answer questions, and make their case for why they deserved to reshape the future of energy. Michael prepared like he was preparing for battle. Every word of his presentation was memorized, every slide perfected, every possible question anticipated. His team worked around the clock, refining their proposal until it gleamed. Ruth was equally relentless. She ran her presentation 17 times, timing every second, adjusting every inflection. Her financial models were flawless. Her vision was compelling. She was ready to win. Neither of them knew the other was involved until the morning of the first presentation. Michael arrived at the Meridian Tower at 8:30 a.m., his team behind him, his presentation materials in a sleek leather portfolio. He was wearing his best suit, charcoal Tom Ford, tailored perfectly, paired with a burgundy tie and his lucky cufflinks, the ones his mother had given him when he graduated. The waiting room was elegant and intimidating, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Los Angeles, modern furniture that was more art than seating, and a palpable tension hanging in the air. That's when he saw her. Ruth Hunter sat near the window, reviewing notes on her tablet, completely focused. She wore a navy pencil skirt and a cream blouse, her dark hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. She looked professional, composed, and completely unaware that her skirt had a problem. Michael noticed it immediately, a stain on the back of her skirt, clearly visible, unmistakably menstrual blood. She had no idea. Around the room, he could see other people beginning to notice. A few whispers, a pointed stare. Someone pulled out their phone. Michael Underwood had spent 6 months being trained to see Ruth Hunter, whoever she was, as the enemy. But in that moment, all he saw was a woman about to be humiliated in the most important meeting of her career. He didn't think. He just moved. "Excuse me," Michael said, approaching Ruth with measured confidence. Ruth looked up from her tablet, her brown eyes sharp and assessing. She didn't recognize him. Why would she? They'd never met. "Yes, I'm Michael," he said, extending his hand. "I couldn't help but notice you're with Hunter Industries. Impressive company." Ruth shook his hand cautiously, her grip firm. "Thank you. And you are?" "Underwood Enterprises," he replied, watching her expression carefully. Her eyes flickered, recognition, calculation, and something that might have been hostility. But she maintained her professional composure. "Well, May the best company win. Indeed, Michael said, then lowered his voice, stepping slightly closer. Listen, I hate to be the one to tell you this, but… He slipped off his suit jacket smoothly. Your skirt is ruined. Here. Before Ruth could process what was happening, he draped his jacket around her waist, tying the sleeves in front to secure it. The bathroom is down that hall to the left. There's a shopping center 2 blocks east if you need it. Ruth's face went from confusion to horror in seconds. She reached back, felt the fabric, and understood immediately. The blood drained from her face. Oh my God. It's not noticeable now, Michael said quietly, his voice kind. Go. You have time before the presentation start. Ruth looked at him, really looked at him. This was an Underwood, her sworn enemy, the son of the man her father had taught her to hate. And he'd just saved her from the most humiliating moment of her professional life. Why would you? She started. Because it's the right thing to do, Michael said simply. Go. Quickly. Ruth grabbed her bag and hurried toward the bathroom, Michael's jacket wrapped around her waist. In the bathroom, she confirmed the nightmare. The stain was obvious, unavoidable, and absolutely mortifying. If she'd walked into that presentation room like this, it would have been career-defining for all the wrong reasons. She called her assistant. Bring me a change of clothes. Now. Dark pants, whatever you can find. I don't care if you have to buy them off someone's back. 20 minutes. While she waited, Ruth stood in the bathroom, gripping the sink, trying to process what had just happened. And Underwood had helped her. The enemy had shown her kindness. It didn't make sense. Nothing about this made sense. 45 minutes later, wearing emergency pants her assistant had procured from a nearby boutique, Ruth returned to the waiting room. The presentations had begun. Michael was nowhere to be seen. He was likely already inside, delivering his pitch. Ruth's presentation was scheduled for the afternoon. She delivered it flawlessly, her mind sharp despite the morning's chaos. Every slide landed. Every answer was confident. She was brilliant and she knew it. When she finished, the panel thanked her warmly. She'd done everything right. As she exited the building late that afternoon, she found Michael leaning against a car in the parking garage, his jacket folded over his arm. You survived, he said, smiling. Ruth approached him, her expression unreadable. I need to return this. She held out his jacket, which she'd been carrying since retrieving it from the bathroom. Keep it, Michael said. Consider it a gift. I can't accept gifts from competitors, Ruth said firmly, but there was something softer in her voice. Then consider it borrowed, Michael replied. You can return it another time. Ruth looked at him for a long moment. Thank you. Really? You saved me today. Anyone would have done the same. No, Ruth said quietly. They wouldn't have. Especially not someone from your family. The words hung between them in the concrete stillness of the parking garage. Ruth was right, and Michael knew it. His father would have let her walk into that room, humiliated. Would have smiled while she suffered. Would have used it against her family for years to come. I'm not my father, Michael said finally. Neither am I, Ruth replied. They stood there, 2 heirs to rival empires, seeing each other as human beings for the first time in a 30-year war. Listen, Ruth said, making a decision she couldn't quite explain. Let me buy you dinner. As a thank you. I owe you that much. Michael hesitated. Every instinct trained into him said no. His father's voice echoed in his head. Never trust a hunter. But looking at Ruth, at her genuine expression, her obvious gratitude, he found himself nodding. Sure. Why not? I know a quiet place, Ruth said. Nothing fancy. Just good food. 20 minutes later, they were sitting in a small Italian bistro tucked away in a neighborhood neither of their families frequented. It was the kind of place with checkered tablecloths, candlelight, and a menu handwritten in chalk. I have to admit, Michael said, studying his menu, this is surreal. Tell me about it, Ruth replied. If my father knew I was having dinner with you right now, he'd probably have a stroke. My father would disown me, Michael said, then laughed. Actually, he might do worse than that. They ordered. Michael got the carbonara. Ruth chose the mushroom risotto. When the food arrived, they ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before the conversation began to flow. "So, what made you join the family business?" Ruth asked. "Did you ever consider doing something else?" Michael paused, fork halfway to his mouth. "Honestly, no. It was always the plan. From the time I could walk, I was being groomed for it." "You?" "Same," Ruth admitted. "I used to think about being a doctor when I was young. Silly, right? But by the time I was 12, I knew that wasn't realistic. Hunter Industries was my destiny." "That's not silly," Michael said. "It's honest." They discovered they both took their coffee black. Both loved sushi, but hated avocado. Both had traveled extensively, but preferred mountains to beaches. Both read financial reports like other people read novels and found strange comfort in spreadsheets. "This is weird," Ruth said suddenly, laughing. "We're supposed to hate each other." "Are we?" Michael challenged. "Or are our fathers supposed to hate each other, and we're just caught in the crossfire?" Ruth considered this, swirling wine in her glass. "Fair point. But it doesn't change reality. We're competing for the same $10 billion contract. Only one of us can win." "True," Michael agreed. "But that doesn't mean we have to be enemies outside the boardroom. Doesn't it?" Ruth's voice was quieter now. "Our families have been at war for 30 years. This isn't just business, Michael. It's personal for them." "But it doesn't have to be personal for us," Michael said, leaning forward. "We didn't start this war. Why should we keep fighting it?" Ruth wanted to argue, but she couldn't find the words. He was right. She'd spent her entire life hating the Underwood family on principle, without ever knowing any of them. And now, sitting across from Michael, she realized how arbitrary that hatred was. When dinner ended, they walked to their cars slowly, neither wanting the evening to end. "Thank you again," Ruth said. "For this morning. And for tonight." "Thank you for inviting me," Michael replied. I had a good time." "So did I," Ruth admitted. "Which is concerning." They both laughed, the sound echoing in the quiet parking lot. "Good night, Michael Underwood." "Good night, Ruth Hunter." They drove away in opposite directions, both replaying the evening in their minds, both trying to ignore the flutter in their chests. That night, Michael lay in his king-sized bed, staring at the ceiling of his penthouse, unable to sleep. His mind kept drifting back to Ruth, her laugh, her intelligence, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about architecture, a secret passion she'd admitted over dessert. "This is insane," he thought. "She's a hunter. This cannot happen." Across the city, Ruth was having the same crisis. She'd changed into pajamas, made chamomile tea, and tried to read, but the words blurred on the page. All she could see was Michael's face, the kindness in his eyes when he'd helped her, the easy way they'd talked like old friends. "This is ridiculous," she said aloud to her empty apartment. "He's the enemy. This was just a thank you dinner. Nothing more." But her heart wasn't listening to her logic. 2 days later came the second pitch presentation. Both companies delivered strong performances. The Meridian Project panel asked tough questions, probing for weaknesses, testing their resolve. Michael answered every challenge flawlessly. Ruth was equally impressive, her confidence commanding the room. When they ran into each other in the lobby afterward, the attraction was undeniable. "Good presentation," Michael said. "Yours too," Ruth replied. "You're better than I expected." "Should I be insulted?" "Probably," Ruth smiled. "But I meant it as a compliment." "Let me buy you lunch," Michael said impulsively. "I know this amazing Italian place." "Michael," Ruth interrupted, her voice firm but not unkind. "I should say no." "But you're not going to," he said, reading her expression. Ruth sighed. "No, I'm not. Against my better judgment, I'm not." He took her to Antonio's, a family-owned restaurant with the best authentic Italian food in Los Angeles. The owner knew Michael by name, greeting him warmly and showing them to a private table in the back. "I'm not really a fan of Italian food," Ruth admitted once they were seated. "Trust me," Michael said, his eyes sparkling with mischief. "Trust me on this one." He ordered for both of them without looking at the menu, the chef's special, a secret recipe not listed anywhere. When the food arrived, Ruth took one bite and her eyes widened. "Oh my God," she breathed. "This is incredible." "Told you," Michael said, grinning. They talked for 2 hours. About everything and nothing. Ruth told him about her mother's quiet strength, how Doris had built her own separate piece apart from the family war. Michael admitted that sometimes he felt like a puppet, dancing to strings his father pulled. "Do you ever wonder what life would be like if we'd met differently?" Ruth asked suddenly. "If our families weren't enemies?" "Every day since I met you," Michael said honestly. The air between them changed, charged, electric, dangerous. Ruth felt it, felt herself leaning forward slightly, felt the pull of something she knew she should resist. "Michael," she said softly, "this, whatever this is, it can't happen." "Why not?" "You know why. Our families would destroy us. We're supposed to be rivals, not—" She trailed off, unable to finish. "Not what?" Michael pressed. "Not friends? Not people who enjoy each other's company?" "Not this," Ruth said, gesturing between them. "Not whatever we're becoming." Michael reached across the table, not quite touching her hand, but close enough that she could feel the heat of his skin. "What if I don't care what we're supposed to be?" Ruth pulled back, her resolve cracking but not breaking. "Then you're braver than I am." They finished lunch in heavy silence, both aware they were playing with fire, both unable to stop. When Michael walked her to her car, the afternoon sun casting long shadows, he asked the question that would change everything. "Can I have your number?" Ruth stared at Michael, her car keys in her hand, her heart pounding. Giving him her number would cross a line. It would make this real. It would transform their accidental connection into intentional contact. "You know we can never be anything," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We're sworn enemies, Michael. These lunches, these conversations, I'm only here because of your kind gesture. But I've thought about everything, and please, let's not try to go down a path that will destroy us both." Michael's jaw tightened. "I understand. But I just want your number. That's all. Just let me be able to reach you." Ruth searched his face, looking for manipulation, for strategy, for any sign this was part of some elaborate corporate scheme. But all she saw was genuine emotion, raw hope. "This is a mistake," she said, even as she pulled out her phone. "Give me yours." They exchanged numbers in the parking lot, the simple act feeling monumental, forbidden. When Michael's phone buzzed with her contact information, he smiled, a real, unguarded smile that made Ruth's stomach flip. "Thank you," he said. "Don't make me regret this," Ruth replied, climbing into her car. She drove home in a daze, her mind racing. What had she just done? Her father would be furious. Her career could be jeopardized. Everything she'd worked for could crumble because she couldn't resist giving her number to a man she was supposed to hate. That evening, as Ruth sat in her apartment trying to focus on preparation for the final pitch, her phone lit up. "I hope you arrived home safely." She stared at the message, a smile creeping across her face despite herself. She shouldn't reply. The smart thing would be to ignore it, to maintain distance, to remember who they were. She replied anyway. "Yes, thank you." Her phone stayed silent for the rest of the night. Ruth told herself she was relieved. She wasn't disappointed. She definitely wasn't checking her phone every 5 minutes. She was lying to herself. The next morning, another message. "How was your night? I know you look beautiful this morning." Ruth read it 3 times. Her finger hovered over the keyboard. She should shut this down. Should establish boundaries. Should remember that in 2 days, they'd know who won the contract, and one of them would be celebrating while the other dealt with crushing defeat. She didn't reply. 2 days later, the announcement came. Underwood Enterprises had won the Meridian project. $10 billion. The deal of the decade. Michael should have been celebrating. Instead, he sat in his office, staring at his phone, at Ruth's silent number, feeling hollow. "Son." William burst through the door, champagne in hand. "We did it. We crushed them." Hunter's face must be purple right now. He laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "This is what winning looks like." Michael forced a smile. Yes, father. We won. But he didn't feel like a winner. He felt like he'd lost something far more valuable than any contract. Across town, Ruth sat in her father's office, enduring his disappointment like physical blows. How could you lose this, Ruth? Randall demanded, pacing like a caged animal. How could you let Underwood beat us? Do you know how this makes us look? Do you understand what you've cost this family? I did my best, Ruth said quietly, her voice empty. Your best wasn't good enough. Randall slammed his hand on the desk. That family always finds a way to destroy us. Always. Ruth said nothing. She was thinking about Michael's texts, his kindness, his smile. And she was wondering if her father was right, if she'd been played. If the jacket, the dinners, the chemistry had all been a strategy to soften her, to make her lose her edge. Maybe she deserved to lose. Maybe she'd been a fool. She blocked Michael's number that night. Michael called Ruth 17 times over the next week. Every call went straight to voicemail. His texts showed as delivered but unread. He'd been blocked, completely shut out. You're not yourself, son, William observed one evening, finding Michael staring blankly at financial reports. You won us a huge contract and defeated my enemy one more time. You should be celebrating, not moping around like someone died. I'm just tired, father, Michael said, the lie tasting bitter. Then take a week off. You've earned it. Rest, celebrate, enjoy your victory. Michael took the week off, but not to rest. He became a man on a mission. He called in favors, made inquiries, employed the same research skills he'd used to win the contract to track down information about Ruth Hunter. He discovered she had a favorite restaurant, Golden Dragon, a small Chinese place in Pasadena. She went there every Thursday evening, usually alone, always ordering the same thing. His plan was simple: go there every day for 7 days. Eventually, she'd show up. Day 1, no Ruth. Day 2, no Ruth. Day 3, there she was. Ruth walked into Golden Dragon at 7:15 p.m., wearing jeans and a simple sweater, her hair down, looking tired and sad. She didn't see Michael sitting in the corner booth until she'd already placed her order. Their eyes met across the restaurant. Ruth's expression cycled through shock, anger, and something that might have been relief before settling on guarded hostility. She grabbed her order ticket and turned to leave. Ruth, wait. Michael was out of his seat, crossing the restaurant in quick strides. Please, just talk to me. There's nothing to say, Ruth said, not looking at him. Then why are you not picking up my calls? Michael's voice cracked slightly. Why did you block me? You know why, Ruth said, finally meeting his eyes. You won. I lost. My father, her voice broke. My father thinks I'm a failure. And maybe I am. Maybe I was distracted. Maybe you. Ruth, no, Michael said urgently, reaching for her hand. She pulled away, but he persisted, gently holding her wrist. Please. Just sit with me. 5 minutes. That's all I ask. The restaurant staff was starting to stare. Ruth realized she was causing a scene. Against every instinct screaming at her to run, she let Michael guide her to his booth. Ruth, I swear to you, Michael said once they were seated, his voice low and intense, I am not happy winning that contract. I haven't slept in days. I can't eat. I can't think about anything except you. Ruth looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the truth in his eyes, the dark circles, the exhaustion, the genuine distress. I thought you played me, she admitted quietly. I thought the jacket, the dinners, all of it was a strategy. To make me soft. To make me lose. God, no, Michael said, horrified. Ruth, that contract meant nothing to me compared to. He stopped, searching for words. You matter more than any deal. You matter more than my father's approval. You matter more than winning. Tears pricked Ruth's eyes. My father lost faith in me. He thinks I'm weak. And maybe I am, because I can't stop thinking about you either. They talked for 3 hours. Ruth told him about the pressure, the constant disappointment in her father's eyes, the crushing weight of failure. Michael listened, really listened, offering comfort without platitudes. Come work for me, he said suddenly. Join Underwood Enterprises. Ruth laughed despite herself. That would kill my father. Then let's start our own company. Michael. I'm serious. Why do we have to choose between them? Why can't we choose us? Because it's not that simple, Ruth said. But she unblocked his number that night. From that night forward, Michael and Ruth embarked on a secret relationship that felt like living in a spy movie. They couldn't be seen together publicly. Too risky, too many people who would recognize them and report back to their families. So they got creative. Michael would rent out entire movie theaters for private screenings, just the two of them watching films in an empty auditorium, sharing popcorn like normal people on a normal date. Ruth would book private rooms at obscure restaurants across the city, places where neither family had connections. They exchanged gifts through carefully orchestrated deliveries. Michael sent her rare books on architecture to her office, always from anonymous admirers. Ruth sent him vintage cufflinks through courier services, with notes signed only with a small R. Their connection deepened with each stolen moment. Video calls at midnight when neither could sleep. Text messages throughout the day, inside jokes, random observations, the kind of constant communication that signaled they were falling fast and hard. When the next major contract came up, a billion-dollar telecommunications deal, Michael did something that would have made his father disown him on the spot. He helped Ruth win. Late-night phone calls where he walked her through strategy. Anonymous tips about the client's priorities. He even deliberately weakened Underwood's proposal, citing scheduling conflicts that prevented their strongest presentation. Hunter Industries won the bid. Ruth delivered the news to her father, who nearly wept with relief and pride. "You've redeemed yourself," Randall said, pulling her into a rare hug. "You've proven you're truly a hunter." Ruth smiled and nodded, guilt churning in her stomach, knowing the truth would destroy him. The victory improved her standing, impressed her father, and gave her confidence. But more importantly, it gave her and Michael something to celebrate together. He took her to a private rooftop he'd rented for the evening, champagne and city lights, and they danced to music only they could hear. "I'm proud of you," Michael whispered against her hair. "You let me win," Ruth replied.
"No.
"I gave you room to show how brilliant you are. You won all on your own." They kissed under the stars, surrounded by a city that had no idea two warring dynasties were being united by two young people who dared to choose love over legacy. For 3 beautiful months, they lived in their secret bubble. They were careful, so careful. Different restaurants each time. Disguises when needed. Never the same location twice. But they forgot about Ruby Allen. Ruby was the daughter of tech billionaire Marcus Allen, a family friend of the Underwoods. She'd been pursuing Michael for years, encouraged by William, who saw the Allen connection as valuable. Michael had always politely declined her advances. Ruby was materialistic, rude to service staff, and interested only in his money and status. Ruby didn't take rejection well. When she spotted Michael and Ruth at Le Bernardin, an upscale French restaurant they'd thought was safe, she almost couldn't believe her luck. She knew exactly who Ruth Hunter was. Everyone in their social circle knew about the Underwood Hunter feud. And Michael had just lost a billion-dollar deal to Hunter Industries. He should hate Ruth Hunter. Instead, he was feeding her dessert, his eyes soft with unmistakable affection. Ruby's smile was vicious as she raised her phone and started taking photos. The images hit celebrity gossip blogs within hours. By morning, they were everywhere. Rival heirs in secret romance. Underwood and Hunter, corporate Romeo and Juliet. Billion-dollar betrayal. Michael Underwood dating enemy's daughter. Michael's phone started ringing at 6 a.m. His father's name flashing on the screen like a warning siren. Across town, Ruth's phone was exploding with similar calls. Their secret was out. The war was about to begin. And this time they were the targets. The next 48 hours were chaos incarnate. Michael and Ruth met in secret at a small park outside the city, both wearing sunglasses and hoodies like criminals. "My father wants to disown me," Michael said, his voice hollow. "He called me a traitor. Said I've embarrassed the family name." "Mine threatened to fire me," Ruth replied. "Called you a manipulative snake who seduced me to sabotage our company." They sat on a bench, shoulders touching, watching children play on swings, oblivious to the adult drama unfolding. "We could run," Michael said suddenly. "Just leave. Start over somewhere else." "And do what? Abandon everything we've built? Let them win." "What are we winning, Ruth?" Michael turned to face her. "We're miserable. We're fighting a war we never started for people who will never be satisfied." Ruth knew he was right, but knowing and acting were different things. That's when Michael's phone rang. "William. Again." "I have to deal with this," Michael said. "So do I," Ruth agreed. They kissed a long, desperate kiss that tasted like goodbye before parting ways. Michael drove straight to Underwood Enterprises. He found his father in the boardroom, surrounded by lawyers and PR consultants, all working on damage control. "How could you?" William's voice was ice. "How could you betray everything I've built? Everything this family stands for?" "Father, let me explain." "Explain?" William slammed his fist on the table. "You're sleeping with the enemy. With Randall Hunter's daughter. Do you have any idea what this looks like? What this means?" "It means I'm in love," Michael said quietly, but with steel in his voice. The room went silent. The lawyers exchanged uncomfortable glances. William stared at his son like he'd grown a second head. "Love." William's laugh was bitter. "You're willing to destroy your family's reputation for love? You're more foolish than I thought." "I'm willing to choose my own happiness over a 30-year-old grudge that has nothing to do with me," Michael said, standing straighter. "I'm tired of fighting a war I never started, Father. I'm done." Across town, a similar confrontation was unfolding. "You've disgraced us," Randall shouted at Ruth, his face red with fury. "That boy, that Underwood scum, he's been using you. Can't you see that?" "He loves me, Father," Ruth said, her voice shaking but determined. "And I love him." "Love." Randall spat the word like poison. "There is no love between an Underwood and Hunter. There's only betrayal. Only pain. Only because you and William made it that way." Ruth shot back, years of frustration finally breaking free. "You've been so consumed by hatred that you forgot how to be human. Michael isn't his father, and I'm not you. If you continue this relationship," Randall said coldly, "you are no longer my daughter." Ruth felt the words like a physical blow, but she stood her ground. "Then I guess I'm not your daughter anymore." The ultimatums had been issued. Lines had been drawn. But Michael and Ruth weren't finished fighting. 1 week into the chaos, Michael made the decision that would define the rest of his life. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't function knowing Ruth was suffering. If he had to choose between his family's approval and Ruth, the choice was simple. He walked into his father's office unannounced. "I love her, Father. And I can leave this company if that's what it takes. I'll walk away from everything, the money, the legacy, all of it, if that's the price of being with her." William stared at his son, seeing the determination in his eyes. "You'd throw away your birthright for a Hunter?" "I'd throw away anything for her," Michael said, "because she's worth more than all of this combined." Before William could respond, Michael left the building. He had one more person to confront. Hunter Industries' headquarters loomed before him like a fortress. Security tried to stop him, but Michael pushed through, taking the elevator straight to the executive floor. He burst into Randall Hunter's office, where Ruth's father was in the middle of a conference call. "Get out," Randall roared, ending the call abruptly. "No," Michael said, standing his ground. "You need to hear this. You'll have to kill me, Mr. Hunter, because I love your daughter. Whatever fight or war you have with my father is between you two. Do not involve me and Ruth in your ancient grudge." "How dare you?" "I dare because Ruth deserves better than this." Michael's voice echoed through the office. "She deserves to be happy. She deserves to make her own choices. And she deserves a father who supports her instead of using her as a weapon in his corporate war." Outside the office, Ruth had arrived, alerted by security. She heard every word through the door, her hand pressed against the glass, tears streaming down her face. He was fighting for her. He was standing up to her father, something she'd been too afraid to do completely. She pushed the door open. "Father, stop. Please." Randall looked between Michael and Ruth, seeing their united front, and something in his expression shifted. Not acceptance, not yet, but perhaps the first crack in his armor. "I love him, Father," Ruth said, walking to stand beside Michael. "And I will do everything for him. I'll leave the company. I'll change my name. I'll give up everything if I have to. But I won't give him up." That evening, something unexpected happened. Rachel Underwood and Doris Hunter had a secret meeting at a neutral cafe downtown. The two women had watched their husbands wage war for 3 decades. They'd watched their families suffer. And now they were watching their children be torn apart. "We cannot allow these men to make our children miserable," Rachel said, stirring her tea with quiet determination. "Agreed," Doris replied. "Michael and Ruth have been miserable since this scandal started. Not eating, not sleeping. It's destroying them." "Then we need to make our husbands see reason," Rachel said, "before they lose their children forever." The mothers became allies, slowly working on their stubborn husbands. Meanwhile, Michael and Ruth had reached their breaking point. After one particularly brutal week of family pressure, public scrutiny, and emotional exhaustion, Michael sent Ruth a simple text: "Run away with me. Tonight." They met at midnight, threw some clothes in bags, and drove. They didn't stop until they reached Miami, checking into a small beachside hotel under fake names, finally free to just be together without the weight of their family's expectations crushing them. They spent 3 days in paradise, walking the beach in disguise, their hands intertwined, renting a boat and sailing into the sunset, nothing but blue water and endless sky, waking up in each other's arms, which felt more important than any empire, any legacy, any billion-dollar deal. "I will always choose you," Michael whispered one morning, watching Ruth sleep peacefully for the first time in weeks. On the 3rd day, as they were having breakfast on their rented yacht, they heard voices. Multiple voices. Michael and Ruth looked up to see 4 people boarding the boat: William and Rachel Underwood, Randall and Doris Hunter. Ruth grabbed Michael's hand, preparing for the worst. But William spoke first, his voice softer than either of them had ever heard it. "We've been fools." Randall nodded stiffly. "Our wives, they made us see what we were doing, what we were about to lose." Rachel stepped forward, smiling through tears. "You two found something real. Something that transcends business and money and pride. We were wrong to try to destroy that." "We were wrong about a lot of things," Doris added gently, looking at her daughter. "Sweetheart, if he makes you happy, then we should support that, not fight it." What followed was long overdue. Apologies, tears, and the beginning of healing. The fathers agreed to call a truce, not just for their children, but because continuing the war served no purpose but their own stubborn pride. "There's a little chapel on the beach," Michael said suddenly, looking at Ruth with hope in his eyes. "We could get married. Today. Right now." Ruth laughed, radiant and free. "Are you serious?" "I've never been more serious about anything in my life." 2 hours later, with the sun setting over the Miami shore, Michael Underwood and Ruth Hunter were married on the beach. Ruth wore a simple white dress purchased from a boutique down the street. Michael wore linen pants and a white shirt, barefoot in the sand. Their parents stood as witnesses, for people who'd spent 30 years as enemies, now united by the love of their children. Rachel and Doris cried. William and Randall stood awkwardly side by side, still not quite friends, but no longer enemies. The officiant pronounced them husband and wife. Michael kissed Ruth as waves crashed behind them, and for the first time in 3 decades, the Underwood and Hunter families stood together in peace. Later that evening, as fireworks exploded over the ocean and the families celebrated at a beachside restaurant, Ruth leaned against her new husband, watching their fathers actually laugh together over old stories. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it. We chose love," Michael replied, kissing her temple. "And love won." Their story became legendary in business circles, the rival heirs who fell in love and ended a generation of corporate warfare. Some called it the greatest merger of all time. Others called it a fairy tale. But for Michael and Ruth, it was simply the beginning of their happily ever after. Michael Underwood and Ruth Hunter proved that love is stronger than hatred, that choosing happiness over legacy isn't weakness, it's courage. Their story reminds us that we don't have to carry the burdens of previous generations. Sometimes, the bravest thing we can do is choose our own path, even when the world says it's impossible. This was Rivals to Lovers. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more incredible true stories of love, courage, and redemption.